Our speaker today is Kerry Gray-Harrison, and she'll be talking about healthy habitats and the hidden plants and insects at Texas Discovery Gardens, which is a 7-acre garden in Dallas at Fair Park. It's a habitat that supports a great diversity of beetles, bugs, and botanical growth. And so Kerry will be talking to us today about these critters and the plants they need to survive. Kerry was the horticulture director at Texas Discovery Gardens, but she's very recently transitioned to be a landscape designer with a local engineering firm. She holds a Master of Landscape Architecture from the University of Texas at Arlington and a Bachelor of Science in Botany from the University of Maine at Orono. Kerry's also provided us with as a supplement to our presentation, a handout, which we'll be distributing when we distribute the video recording, which will be in about 7 to 10 days. So I'll turn it over to Kerry.
Well, while he gets that set up, I want to say thank you very, very much for inviting me to come out. Back when I worked at the Discovery Gardens, I would say, oh, this is the favorite part of my job. But I don't work there anymore. So now it's just one of my favorite things to do is to talk about all these plants and critters and about all the good work that you do to buy these plants and plant them in places all over our area because it's so important, so very, very important. Because if you aren't doing that, I mean, who is? It goes away. Does anyone know what this critter is? Yeah, it's a critter. It's not just a piece of. Yes, 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 yes. It's the wavy emerald caterpillar, which I looked back to see when I took this photo, and it was in July of like 2021 or something. So I was out there watering the sales plants, and it was hot because it's out on the concrete. And I was like, oh man, this sucks because I have to water and it's so hot, blah, blah, blah. And then I saw this little thing over there on the leaf, and I thought, oh, what's that over there? So I go over and I get my camera ready. I'm like, what is that? I don't know what that is. And it's moving. Like it's moving. It's not just a bunch of petals. And so I took a picture and I showed it to John Watts, who's the entomologist at the Discovery Gardens. He said, oh, yeah, that's a wavy leaf or wavy line emerald caterpillar. What? Ah, that's so cool. So, yeah, it takes the detritus of the flowers where it's chewing the leaves and sticks them all over. So sometimes they have yellow petals, sometimes they're purple petals. It just depends on what it's feeding on, or I guess what's handy, and just sticks them on itself. I mean, oh, that was so cool. So then after like feeling so sorry for myself, I'm out here watering in the heat. I'm like, oh, well, if I hadn't been here, I would have seen this. So yeah, these are some of my favorite photographs that I've put together. So like Tim said, and thanks again, Tim. Um, was the horticulture director at the Discovery Gardens, and now I'm not landscape architect or landscape designer, not architect. Hope to be someday. And so I spent about 5 years in my position there at the Discovery Gardens, and then another year before that, watering plants when I was in grad school. So this is like 6 years worth of photographs. I think I have something like 12,000 photos. And so yeah. And sadly, these are not photos of other people. Like they're all plants and flowers and like seeds. And yeah, I mean, I have some of my nephew's photos in there somewhere since he was born. Um, but yeah, so lots of photos. It was very hard to choose. There are plenty more. So if you ever invite me back another time, I'll bring some more of my favorites. But just to talk about what we're going to talk about, arthropods, which are the moths and the spiders and the butterflies, and then some plants, and then hummingbirds, because we had hummingbirds out there all the time and their habitat. And then I just wanted to make like a mural of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of green anoles, because they're just like everywhere going, take my picture. But as you know, it's a food web. It's all mixed up together. So this feeds on that. And so there's a picture of this and this, oh, this plant and then that critter. And then, so what we will talk about is why care about native plants? I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, but there may be some people watching or that haven't been here before or new to this whole idea. They're tough. They survive all the summers and winters and whatever, but they're so important for all of those critters. We don't have those little bees and insects and flies and whatever without those plants. So that's why we care about the native plants. Texas Discovery Gardens, where is that? I'm sure you've been, but there may be some people that haven't. And then I'll show some of the cool caterpillar pictures and then the host plants and then more plants and then hummingbirds and habitat and then the lizard montage. So yeah, plants are kind of important for those of you that don't really think about plants all that much. Basically the basis of life here on Earth, except for maybe the tube bins or the tube worms down the bottom of the ocean. The herbivores and the producers are important stuff. Native plants, I was just looking at City of Dallas code today, and they have to have screening plants of evergreens. And, what evergreen native shrubs can you get available wholesale? I mean, so all of those plants are kind of going away. And then when the habitat goes away, there's no more critters. Blackland prairie is so rare, and then Bermuda is not. But every little tiny bit counts. Every little bit of mistflower counts, because this is where I park now in the mornings. And look at that. It's really sad, degraded soil. But all it needs is maybe some mistflower plants, and then it starts to be part of the ecosystem again. All right, so where is the Discovery Gardens? It's in Bear Park, so Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, inside Bear Park, and then that's sort of at the corner there of roughly High 30 and then 45 there. And then that's a nice aerial of what it looks like in the middle of the summer. So we've got the big grandolee there. We've got my favorite part, the butterfly habitat over here, and just lots of good stuff. There's a bioswale that we put in starting in 2019. Lots of good stuff to see. And because at least when I worked there, we didn't use pesticides, and we tried to really make sure that we left a lot of the leaves and other materials there, we got a lot of good birds and insects. So the giant swallowtails, I mean, it's so much fun to show these to the little kids or any of the scouts out there. And then if you kind of poke them, they release their scent to make you go away. They feed on the citrus family. And we had a whole bunch. This is what I'm holding in my hand, where those plants, you can see that's Joe's feet right there. And these are my feet right here. The master gardeners didn't want them on the toothache tree in the master gardener's garden. So he's like, oh, and I'm like, don't kill him. I'll take him. I'll put him on the tree back in the butterfly habitat. So that's what I did. And I was going to take some home if I could find them later, but they had already climbed up into the tree and were gone. And I have a toothache tree at home that is ready for a giant swallowtail to come lay eggs on it. So come on, giant swallowtails, lay your eggs on that tree. And then Gulf fritillary. This was another one that was so much fun because we had an arbor that was dedicated to 5 or 6 different species of passion vines. So we could always be guaranteed to find a caterpillar when we had somebody that wanted to see a caterpillar. And you can see right here, it's starting to make that J shape, and it's going to form its chrysalis. And that's what they look like right after they emerge. So this one, you can see its chrysalis down at the bottom, and it's getting its wings ready to fly away. And here's another great photo that I got. We have a lot of the cannas over outside the butterfly house there. And I saw a Gulf fritillary over in cannas, and I thought, oh, is she laying an egg? And I got ready, and sure enough, she flew off and left her egg right there on the passion vine. So I got a picture of a freshly laid egg. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then, of course, somebody was walking by, and I said, hey, you want to look at this? This butterfly just laid an egg. So that was cool. And then we have the native two of the native species here. That's the Incarnata, which is, you know, crazy aggressive. And then the one that's not so crazy aggressive, the yellow one that has those little bitty flowers, but it's really nice and it likes the shade. So if you don't have some, try and get some. Does anybody have this? Yeah, cool. Then our gray hair streaks everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And I think it's probably because they're not too picky. 11 different species like pines and lupins, New Jersey tea, palafox. Those are plants that we had all over there. So really easy to take photographs of those, but of course it doesn't do justice because you can't see how they're wiggling their backs to kind of attract the predators. And so they're really fun to see wiggle around. They're another good one to show off to especially little kids that want to see things moving. And speaking of not staying still for the camera, the milkweed beetle. These things are very shy. Has anyone ever seen these? Yes, you have. Did it just like drop right away? Once? Oh, so I was thankful. Yeah, this was hard to get in focus because it just, as soon as I got kind of close, it would just drop into the litter. But their larvae also drop down into the litter, and that's where they pupate. So this was a cool photo to get. This was actually on Texas milkweed, but it looks like its most favorite is the swamp milkweed, but it's a very beautiful beetle. And lace wings. I could not believe I got a photograph of a lacewing stabbing an aphid. I mean, what are the chances? I don't think my eyes are that good anymore. I think I probably took this in 2019. Um, but yeah, so they're great predators, and there's proof. Stabbing the aphid, or it's probably pinching it. And then you can see kind of the carcass down below of maybe one that's been infected by one of the parasitoid wasp, I think. Don't quote me on that. John will know. And then another thing that takes detritus and sticks it on its back is the lacewing larvae. So I think that's a green lacewing, and then they're also called trash bugs, and then they like wall around like these tiny little, they're like less than a quarter of an inch, and you just see like these little pieces of trash just like doodling along, and it's a lacewing larvae. Who knew? I'm sure you knew, but I didn't know. And I had to include this photograph of this beetle. Has anyone ever seen a Eumolpine chrysomelid beetle? I had asked John about this one, and he wasn't sure of the genus or species. He was going to look it up, but it's in this family and subfamily or sub something. But it's so shiny and gorgeous. You can see the sky reflected in this beetle's carapace. Just really, really pretty. Yeah, I don't know what it feeds on because we don't know the species, but man, if you see them, try and get a picture of it. They're beautiful. And then, of course, here's the wavy lined emerald. This is what it looks like as an adult. And this photograph I did not take. I couldn't find the adult one that I found somewhere. But it's a very pretty little moth, and it's a really cool little caterpillar. And it feeds on about 16 species in our area. So how do we know that? Has anybody heard of the National Wildlife Federation Native Plant Finder website? I'm sure you have. Just a reminder, this is what it looks like on the website. And if you haven't seen it, this is what you do. You put in your zip code, and you can search for a specific plant, or you can look for a butterfly, and it tells you what it feeds on in your area. So sometimes you'll have a plant that maybe isn't Blackland Prairie area, or maybe even in your zip code. You're like, I saw that growing out in the Herd Museum. I know it grows here. So they don't always have everything, but sometimes I kind of cheat and I put in a different zip code, and sometimes that works, and then it will tell me what that caterpillar feeds on. But it's a lot of a lot of fun to just peruse. This is the McKinney zip code, 76069, I think. So the most important host plants for this area are goldenrod that feed 82 species, sunflowers, 81, 33 for the eupatorium, and then what else? The amorpha, the false indigos, 28 species. And then trees and shrubs, this is where we get into the really big numbers. 468 species for those oaks, and then 270 different species for the cherries, and 183 for the cottonwoods. So I don't think anybody is really planting cottonwoods on purpose, but they play such an important role. Yeah, I do too. If I can find a space, I mean, I can't plant one at home, but somewhere. And there's a giant cottonwood at the Discovery Gardens that is producing all kinds of seeds. And so those cottonwoods, even though they may be annoying and make your nose itch, they're so important for all of those different caterpillar species. And then you can look at the critters. So what are some of the critters in this zip code? Brown scoopwing. I've never seen one of those. Has anybody seen one? It's kind of in the middle there, right here. Yeah, I don't know. Hair streaks, yeah. Monarchs, yeah. Pipevines, swallowtails, yeah. Don't know about the others. But anyway, so you get the idea. Insects and what they feed on. So this is a fun story I like to share. We had Dr. Doug Tallamy, come and speak at the Native Plant Symposium in 2019. And I was so lucky that I got to go pick him up at his hotel. So I got to have a few minutes just talking to him. And so I said, "Oh, Dr. Tallamy, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so native plants, I mean, what's your take on native plants? Because I hear native plants and non-native plants. What do you think?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, as long as it's the productive plants. So that's what's really important, is that there's something that feeds on them." And then in his presentation, he brought up how important it was to make sure that we had caterpillars. Because if you're trying to support birds and you're feeding a lot of critters all at the same time, and you have all these mouths that want to be fed, what they do is just stuff those caterpillars down the baby's throats. Just and so they can feed them, they don't have to worry about it. So they really, in his research, he found that they really preferred squishy caterpillars to feed their babies. Where if you think of something that's kind of crunchy, like a beetle or grasshopper, they have to tear it apart before they can get the parts to stuff down the baby's throat. So the caterpillars are really important for the whole ecosystem. So there's a sawfly larvae, I think, which looks really squishy. And then a crunchy beetle. So speaking of caterpillars and what they feed on, monarch butterflies, I know these aren't rare. Well, they're easy to find sometimes, but they always came to the Discovery Gardens during the state fair. And so there's an image right here. We would tag them and they would look at those tags. People would be able to record the numbers of the tags in the mountains of Mexico over winter. And so people all over the country can see if that butterfly actually made it down for the full migration. This is a queen caterpillar that looks a lot like a monarch caterpillar, and they're just so pretty. Nessus sphinx. Has anybody ever seen one of these? I hadn't either until we were working on the butterfly or the hummingbird habitat, and we were pulling up weeds and trying to get some of the other stuff out of there. And then there was this critter, and it feeds on grapes, pepper vine, evening primrose, Virginia creeper. So there was plenty of Virginia creeper there for it to eat. I have never seen one, but now I know what it is. And Virginia creeper is obnoxious, but it's a good host plant. Pipevine swallowtails. Yeah, these are so much fun. They're so fast. They'll crawl across the sidewalk in no time. And then they look like they're not even real. They look like jelly candy. This is a non-native species. This is the Fimbriata, but it's really pretty. And the pipevine swallowtails lay eggs on it all the time. So maybe we can make an allowance for that one. But there's also the tomentosa, which is the native species. And I'll see caterpillars on those too. And then that's the adult. She's laying an egg right there on the leaf. And yeah, I kind of miss that, being able to watch caterpillars or watch butterflies lay their eggs, but that's okay. And bluebells. There's a nice bluebell out in front of the building out here that's blooming. And then I saw a whole stand of them on the side of the road. My husband and I went to College Station last weekend or the weekend before. And on that highway, there was a nice stand. So I want to go back and get some seeds later on. But the reason I have this inset is where all of the leaves are taken out. And I didn't take this at the Discovery Gardens. This was Tandy Hills. But do you know what made that pattern in this flower on the right side? Any guesses? Yes. And then it has cut it just so symmetrically that it looks like that's what the flower looks like, but it really looks like the flower on the left side. So I guess this is the right texture and maybe the thickness that the leaf cutter bees then take inside. Maybe it's really similar. You always see these circles out of the red bud leaves, same thing. So important to have all these building materials for our ecosystem. And guara. Guara is a plant that we can get wholesale. So it's good to know that it's a good host plant. And these are the caterpillars that we had feeding on them, this white-lined sphinx. And this was another one that when disturbed, it would drop down into the soil. So it was kind of hard. But I did get a nice, good close-up picture of it actually feeding on the leaf. And then it's got the little sphinx horn at the back right there. And then it turns into that really gorgeous moth. And assassin bugs. What are the chances of getting a photograph of it after it speared its prey? I mean, I was pretty lucky there. But they were on all of the frostweed and silphium in the butterfly habitat. If you've been there, you can see these things everywhere. And it's just a matter of numbers of when you get to be there at the right time when it's just speared prey. But they're a reason why we did not have to use pesticides, because we had all of this nature filling in and eating all these bugs whenever they got kind of out of control. So yeah, that was pretty cool. And what are the chances of seeing it stab it? And then this is another photograph that I did not take at the Discovery Gardens. This was at the Wildflower Center. My sister volunteers there in the butterfly kiosk. And this is a 7-spotted forester caterpillar. And it wasn't moving. It was just right there on this twig. So I could take like 100 pictures of it to finally get one that was in focus. And then that's what they look like when they're adults. And they are one that feeds on pretty sure no, I can't remember what it is. I was going to say Virginia creeper. Okay. All right. So yeah. And then if I remember correctly, it needed wood to be able to mature. I could have it mixed up with something else, but at least lets me go into the next slide, which talks about the way we manage things was to leave the leaves and leave the twigs and some of the sticks and the rotting wood, and served all kinds of purposes. Those leaves made nice cover for the insects that the birds were hunting. So you can hear them just like chickens. You could see them scratching and hear them scratching, and they would find all kinds of, I don't know, millipedes and what have you that are living inside that leaf layer. And then I use the word lignin just because it alliterates with the other L's, but that just means leaving some of the wood and the twigs and sticks so that it will help decay and be part of that whole cycle. And then leaving some of those standing stems, because this little one, I think this was a evening primrose, the tall ones, the yellow ones, am I thinking right? Biennis. Enothera, biennis. But we just left some of the stems in some areas, and something came along, bored a hole in it, and then spent the winter there. And then I cannot tell you how many silphium stems that we would cut back in that same area, and frostweed too, leave them standing through the winter. And then if you look in, You can sometimes see a lady beetle living in there, or sometimes a jumping spider living in there. They make really great habitat. All right, we have a few more of my favorite plants. Evergreen sumac, you've got quite a few out here. Have you ever tasted them? They're kind of sour and taste like really sour lemonade. I think they've got a lot of vitamin C, but they're actually edible. And then they're also really beautiful, and they're an evergreen plant. So somebody get this plant and make it available wholesale here in North Texas. And that's what it looks like when it's blooming. It'll bloom in the spring and then bloom again in the fall and summer after those heavy rains, if we ever get them again. And of course, frostweed. Now, this isn't a rare plant, but for those of you who don't know about frostweed, Jason, do you know about frostweed? Okay, good. This is my coworker, Jason. So he came up to join us today. So it seeds like crazy, but the ice crystals are worth it. And look at this nice cold winter picture. And we had really good conditions this last winter. So if it's rain, and then temperatures are like around in the 20s, the root pressure will push the water up through the roots of this plant. And then if you don't have wind or more rain, it'll form these amazingly long crystals. So it's so cool. It's worth it to have this plant and then get the right conditions, and then you can see all these beautiful crystals. And then here on the right is King, our companion. He's our official title was our morale officer and pest control associate. But I went out there to take some pictures. I was hoping the frostweed would have some crystals, and it did. And then King, of course, had to come out and see what I was doing. And then it's a favored food for monarchs. The stands that we had there were just guaranteed to have monarchs in the fall, right in time for state fair. So you could sit on the benches and watch the whole show with the monarchs feeding and fluttering around on the frostweed forest. So it's just a really good plant to have. Then some of the others you may not have seen, Texas toadflax over here. That's one of those little spring ones that's just here for a little while, and then once it gets hot, it's gone. But I did get a picture somewhere of, I think, a buckeye feeding on it, so it's also a host plant. Of course, we saw basket flower earlier. These basket flowers kept flowering until November. They just would not stop. So they're supposed to be kind of stopping the heat. I think it's probably because we just irrigated all summer and it was just in the right place and so happy, but it kept going and going and going. And then these little Venus looking glass right here. Is anyone familiar with them? Yeah. So they look like just sort of green weeds, and they produce little seed pods without flowers. But then once they get to the very top, they produce that 5-petal flower. And then if you let them grow, you'll just have tons and tons of these beautiful little flowers coming out. And their seeds are just like powder. They're so tiny, 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 tiny. So it's almost impossible for you to plant them where you want them to grow because they wash away so easily. I don't know. Do you have good luck on they just grow? Yeah. Yeah, me too. I love them. I think they're so cute. Oh, wrong way. All right, so Cecropia silk moth. This is one that I haven't seen here, so I'm just kind of sneaking this one in. But when the Wildflower Center had to shut for the pandemic, my sister volunteering there had all of these Cecropia silk moth eggs. So I said, oh, sure, I'll take them. And then lots of them hatched. And then I had all these caterpillars to feed. So I had to go out every morning and grab more leaves. I think I was feeding this one Mexican plum. So I had about 3 that survived to a big size. And they were as long as the fingers on my hands. They were huge. And then the bigger they got, the more colors they got. So they had like orange and bright pink and turquoise and green. They were just, man, that was it was like having a puppy. I had to just go like feed these things because they just kept eating and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then they did emerge, and that's my sister's shoe there. She has a size 5.5 shoe, I think. So if that gives you an idea of how giant this moth is, it's really giant. And then we did release some of these in the Discovery Gardens, but we haven't seen them since then. So I don't know if they really reproduce, but we can always try again. John approved of it, so he was pretty excited to see these caterpillars. And of course, can you imagine taking these like 4 or 5 inch caterpillars out to show kids that are walking around? They're like, ah, couldn't believe that they're real. Oh, wrong way again. All right, and that's another image of what the silk moth caterpillar looks like right there. And then another close-up of the pipevine caterpillar. And here is just a few of the lizard montage. I have so many more, but one of these is pretty special. Does anybody remember Jim Barnum? Yeah, so there's this plaque right here, and this was just maybe a couple of months ago. I was just wandering around taking pictures for this presentation, and there's a lizard just perched on Jim Barnum's rock. It's like, oh, that would be perfect. I'll include that. And of course, hummingbirds. I tried so hard to take photos of hummingbirds. And so I finally succeeded in getting one feeding there in the middle on the bottom. That's on one of the salvias, maybe Darcy-eye. But what's interesting about habitat for the hummingbirds is they seem to really like these dead twigs. So we would just leave some of the dead twigs. And I promise you, at least twice, one of the master naturalists who volunteered, Judy, would be out there saying, oh, should we take this tree down? I mean, it looks really raggedy. And then a hummingbird would land on the twig. And I would look at her and she would look at me and she's like, okay, we'll just leave it. So we left some of those twigs up there, even though they didn't look so great. But I'm guessing probably that the male hummingbirds perch up there. They can see all of their territory and see who they want to run off and who they want to let in. So I think probably having some of those dead twigs is pretty attractive to hummingbirds. But of course, you know, they feed on all those flowers. They feed on all kinds of stuff. They feed on desert willows and of course the salvia and the penstemons, and they're so beautiful. That kind of wraps up some of my favorite plants. How are we doing on time? It's pretty short. Yeah, we're good time. So I wanted to say thank you to John for answering all of my identification questions. And then last state fair, the horticulture crew and I took a selfie. That's the top of my hat there down at the bottom. So that's Amber and Stephanie and Derek, Mallory, Philip, and Keaton there with big text. And then we had King, the cat, with a flower on top of his head. Can you tell how pleased he is with that? All right, so last couple of images, I got this flower fly. I didn't even know that I got a photo of it flying away until I was looking at them later. But that was pretty cool to have it feeding and then zzz. So just like the flower flies, go fly out and plant more native plants and volunteer and, you know, spread the good word about them so that we have this healthy ecosystem. And there's a few of the places that I get information from that I like. Xerxes is one of my favorites, and of course the Native Plant Finder. That's the actual website for that. I'll leave that. And Xerxes really has a nice program on Leave the Leaves. They're doing a lot of push on that. They have some nice signs that you can put out on your yard and pamphlets that they hand out. I think that's it. Yeah. All right.
All right. Well, if you could repeat the questions here,
oh, sure. Yeah, questions.
We'll start with, is there a butterfly that feeds on a bone set?
Oh, that is a good question. I am sure that it has like a butterfly or caterpillar.
Butterfly.
Oh, all kinds of butterflies, nectar on it. Yeah. So anything that's still around in the fall, that's a great one for monarchs. And then as far as it being a host plant, I'm not sure. Maybe somebody else does. But yeah, boneset has all kinds of good stuff that feeds on it.
Okay. And then what was the site that you showed with the zip code by?
Oh yeah, that's this native plant finder.
Okay. The
So right
NWF.
there.
Okay.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, it's the collaboration with National Wildlife Federation and University of Delaware. And then yeah, he was really talking about that during his presentation. And then he showed some of his students' work. And I think now there are other grad students doing more work. So it's really a nice site. And then even some of the University of Delaware research, if you want to look at that and see what they've been doing in suburban urban areas as far as native plants and productive plants and like the 70%, 30% ratio. Yeah, anything else?
Any questions here?
Oh, hi.
One of your early slides listed hawthorn as a native species. I think we're talking about shrubs.
Oh, yeah.
And do we have a native hawthorn?
Yeah.
You could repeat the question.
Yeah. Do we have any native hawthorn species? So yeah, you could probably look on that website and find them. Let me go back. I think that was one of the butterflies that was feeding on hawthorn. Nope, too far. Was it hair streaks, maybe? Yeah. Yeah, so we do. I couldn't tell you their exact species and what's in what region and what's in another region. I'm guessing they're probably mostly East Texas. Probably not too many, although there might be one. But yeah, we do. As far as I know. All right.
And then here's another question
Oh.
from chat. What was the name of the bluish purple flower with 5 petals?
The bluish purple flower of the 5 petals, the little Venus looking glass in the ephemeral slide. Maybe that was it. Maybe they'll answer again and say yes or no. But yeah, I can go to that slide. If it's that bluish purple one with the 5 flowers that looks petals, I mean, that's the Texas bluebells. And then this one, oh, hi, little guy. There's a little critter crawling up here. Looks like a little wasp. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, that's Venus looking glass is its common name. And then, yeah, I probably should have put the species in there, but I didn't. I don't know exactly what species that is, but there's a group of maybe 4 or 5 in the same genus that are pretty similar. So hopefully that's the plant that the question was about.
Here's another question.
Yeah.
For you. What do you miss most about the Texas Discovery Garden?
Oh, who's asking that? Is that one of the gardeners? Of course. From who? David. David Quinn. Oh, yeah. Well, of course, volunteers, David. Yeah, of course. I mean, all of the fun plants and animals, and then all the people that are interested in it. Anybody that's just learned something for the first time. I mean, that just like, oh, yeah, miss that a lot for sure.
Does the Discovery Garden have both employees and volunteers?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think there were about 20 employees there. And then, of course, we had hundreds and hundreds of volunteers that helped us with everything from the butterfly house to state fair to plant sales to docents to maintaining the garden. Yeah, lots and lots of volunteers. I don't know. I am guessing that they'll kind of stick with it maybe a few weeks before State Fair because it was really tough to have it the week before State Fair because there was too much traffic with all the trucks. But sometime probably around middle of September or so. I think the State Fair starts 29th or 27th of September. They started moving it back later in the year. So yeah, yeah. So that's my guess, like sometime in that time range. And then when is the herd having theirs? Anybody know? In the spring. Okay. Yeah. All right. Another question? um, do you? There were a couple of nurseries in Austin, and there was one that looks like it had just opened, like Mesa Verde or something. Native Plants of Texas, or Native Texas Nursery was a wholesale nursery. Oh, sorry. Yeah. The question was, where can we get native plants wholesale? Um, so Native Texas Nursery in Austin, Far South Nursery in Austin, this other one that has just opened up, like Mesa. I've never bought anything there, but they looked like they're just getting ready to go. And then maybe we'll have some in this area of Texas. So if anybody needs a project, start a native plant nursery. I know somebody that's just getting started, so hopefully she gets it going, and then we can spec some of these plants. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, anything else? All right, well, thank you so much. And then I may have to take my little.
Well, thank you so very much. That was quite interesting here. We all need to get down there and visit the gardens down there. Does anybody have any questions or comments or
I was gonna
anything?
just make a comment, just because she showed that picture of that cecropia moth.
Mhm.
We're actually doing a moth event, and y'all may have said, like, I heard on July 27th. It is a fee event, but if you're a member or something, or put up the sheets and all that kind of stuff. Mothing. That's also moth week, so there's lots of moth events.
Yeah.
If you're in Dallas or other places, I know a lot in Dallas too. So.
Is that July? You said July 27th?
July 27th. Yeah.
So,
It's here, but Moth Week is the 20th and 27th. So I know at Spring Creek they're doing it, something at Dallas or Adams Cemetery, they're doing it at. It's all over forward.
so for you people online, Melody just mentioned we were going to do a mothing event here at the herd on July 27th. What time? 8 to 11. So if you want to come out and learn about moths, that's a great time to do that. I personally haven't done that yet, but I may try to make that one. So any other questions, comments?
I forgot to mention that I brought some landscape coreopsis seeds. If you would like some, they're in the little ball here. You can grab a plastic bag and put some in. They dried out without any problem.
Well, we appreciate the presentation. It's funny, you know, as we learn about native plants, what we can do to help. Doug Tallamy's name seems to be a thread through all of that. And, you know, it's his homegrown national park concept. You know, I've written about it several times. It's a very important project to do. I think all of us can contribute to the native landscape by planting, you know, it doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be something like my yard, but just in the corner of the yard, a few native plants here and there. And you'll be surprised what shows up on these plants. You know, I really should spend more time crawling through the yard looking for things. Every time I've done that, I've found interesting things. I love having Carol Clark come over and go through my yard because she's all pulling out all sorts of little native wasp and bees and stuff that I've never even heard of before. And she's going, "Oh, cool. Look what's crawling on the ground." We get down there and look at it and stuff. So you'll be surprised what a few native plants can do for your yard. So I know all of y'all are probably growing something, but get your neighbors to do it. You know, we're the choir. We got to go out there and tell everybody else what to do. So I thank everybody for coming. Stay cool. And we will see you next month here. Thank you.